We want to be the heroes for our clients and our partners, those coming in and solving the problems and showing them the way and making their lives easier. That sort of heroic element to it.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. On today's episode, we have Harmony Crawford, who is the co-founder of Ones and Heroes, a data-driven consulting firm that specializes in simplifying complex data into actionable insights. With over 20 years of experience in building high-impact data teams, Harmony has a deep passion for transforming intricate data into compelling narratives that drive informed business decisions, which is why we're excited to have her on the show. Harmony, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Devin. Yeah, glad to be here.
The pleasure is going to be mine. I'm sure of it. I'm excited to get into some of the work that you're doing. But before we get ahead of ourselves here, Harmony, I'd love to start with just a quick couple of minutes on, a little bit more about who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the co-founder of Ones and Heroes.
Yeah, happy to share that story. I think I've always had an affinity for data and technology. Spent many years at the Seattle Times Company, which is a news media organization locally, building out kind of a business intelligence and analytics team. From there, I went into digital marketing agencies, and I thought that moving into a realm of all digital data would make that ability to tell performance stories based off of the digital data that was available a lot easier. But I found that for our clients, sometimes it was even more complicated because data sources lived in so many different places, and often marketing teams had a very narrow view of performance. While I was at the first agency, I met Patrick, who ended up becoming then co-founder. After he and I spent some time at digital agencies, we decided we wanted to really focus on solving those data problems for clients and business partners. So we formed a vision of how we might do that. We weren't originally named Ones and Heroes. We originally, actually, it's a sort of funny story. We were trying to figure out a business name. And we're both data geeks, so branding and creative, not our strength. But I was actually, I almost got into a car accident one day. I was so lost in thought, trying to come up with either some clever play on a name that reflected what we were going to do, or some unique special word. And then, you have to verify whether or not things are trademarked or already in use when you do come up with the name idea. And so I was so lost in thinking that I ran a red light. I had my family in the car with me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Everybody was okay. But I realized at that point, like, okay, enough. Like, just choose a word and get on with it. So I jumped online and I looked at word of the day. One of the words of the day was deedy, Deedy, which is an archaic British word that means industrious and earnest. And that was very much on brand for what my co-founder Patrick and I envisioned us doing. No BS, get the job done, simplify it, make data accessible, make it usable, build tools that put it into the hands of decision makers in an uncomplicated way. There are lots of tools out there and lots of solutions that can really make it complicated when maybe it doesn't need to be. So we named it Deedy. We started the business under that name. And then as we went out and started working with clients, I found that I had vendors and client teams calling me Deedy. They thought that my name was Deedy and that the business was named after me. And I found out after the fact that Deedy is a nickname for some ladies' names. And so we were a couple of years into it, actually. We had a couple of really successful projects. And we were talking about going through a proper branding process, coming up with the right templates, the right fonts, all of the little things that go into really building a brand identity. Hired the professionals to do it for us. And as part of that process, I said to Patrick, let's have them come up with a new name for us as well. And so they came up with Ones and Heroes. And so we partnered with March Branding, and it was so perfect for our vision. It obviously the play off of Ones and Zeros, but also that our belief that we want to be the heroes for our clients and our partners, those coming in and solving the problems and showing them the way and making their lives easier, that sort of heroic element to it. So we rebranded, sunsetted some of the projects that we had under DD, and started sort of relaunching under Ones and Heroes a little over a year ago.
That's quite the backstory. I love actually when you said Dee Dee, I was reminded of a character on a cartoon that I used to watch. She was the main character on I
Yeah.
think it was Dexter's Laboratory or whatever that was. So that was actually where my mind went. But to
Me-
understand actually the background of like why that was selected is a
like,
really cool story. But I relate so much to the kind of the nerdy aspect of the brand too, where the ones and heroes. It's kind of I get the ones and zeros, but also the heroes part of it, and so very, very clever.
thank you.
And I see how closely tied to the narrative element of the work that you do as well, because even in the name itself, there is a bit of a story baked in, which is r really cool to see. So coming from, the early days of that, um, the startup, assembling the team and, delivering the work and finding the clients, what were some of the challenges that you faced early on, that you didn't think would come up?
Yeah. I think probably a couple key themes. One, sort of starting with the idea that when Patrick and I first started talking about forming a venture together, it began with sort of this vision of, what if you had a company that only hired the best of the best, and no, again, that sort of no BS, no drama, no fluff, just people who were smart, and you give them the space and the runway to get the job done however they need to. And at the time, we had individuals on our team that we felt like, somebody like Max, or Jason, like those were teammates that were like, if you had a company built out of talent like that, it would be incredible. Um, and so with that as part of the vision, when we launched, and then we started having work coming in, keeping true to that part of the vision, and not just allowing any warm body to fill a role or to take a job, but really making sure that we were sticking to hiring the best of the best. It was a challenge because when client work comes in and there's a big demand and somebody might come in with the right skill set, um, it's not just skills, right? It's a matter of how they're going to fit into the overall picture. And I think the right talent is probably one of the biggest factors in a company's success. I often would say in previous roles and doing interviews, pretty much every company has access to the same general set of tools and technology. The one true differentiator is going to be the people, and that's who we're spending all of our time with too. So that was one piece of it. That was one of the part of our vision and what we wanted to adhere to, but also a challenge and a struggle sometimes in making sure that we're not just, again, putting in a warm body that has the skill set, but sticking to trying to find the best of the best. And I think the other part of it was just some of the logistics and operational. I know they say when you start a business, hire an accountant, don't do it yourself. But we're numbers people, right? So
Right.
how hard could it be?
Yeah.
So we did a lot of it ourselves in the beginning, and we were probably maybe 8 months in, and maybe almost a year before I was like, okay, no, we need to have a professional. And it's great because these days a lot of those kinds of professionals are doing sort of part-time work, so they understand how to support small businesses, and maybe they have 3 or 4 different clients that they're working for, because we weren't big enough at that time to need a full-time accountant, but somebody who would help make sure that the books stayed clean from there on out. And so there are pieces like that along the way, like running the business versus practicing the craft, that we had to realize pretty quickly on making the right decision around that too.
Yeah, they're that famous last words of, oh, how hard can it be? I relate to
Right?
that so much in that, especially the early days, right? There's
Yeah.
there's this I guess, resilience to kind of keep pressing forward in spite of the challenges and realizing your scope of skills and then making important decisions along the way to um, delegate specific specialties to people who have expertise in those areas. So as you continue to evolve, I imagine some of that early work in terms of like getting new customers and like really serving them to the highest, of your capacity. There has been an evolution of that. So initially, it probably looked a lot like, you're talking to your immediate network or sphere of influence, and then as you continue to expand, a little bit of that referral, word of mouth starts to kick in. Do you guys do any outbound marketing? Is there any type of other marketing efforts that helped you kind of fuel that growth?
Um, I would say yes and no. So yes, we have explored some of those things, but no, they've not resulted in fueling our growth in the way that we wanted anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, you're exactly right. In the beginning, it is reaching out to your network and sharing with friends and former colleagues, like, hey, we have this offering now. What problems can we help you solve? And that was really great in the beginning for Runway. And I think, exactly as your question is alluding to, as we are refining our focus and continuing to grow, realizing that our growth goals require probably bringing in a solution to help us grow that isn't just Patrick and me and our network and sort of the organic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've experimented with a few different potential solutions, partnering with other agencies who focus on doing that lead gen and demand gen activity. And a couple of different models where it's been either pay for performance or retainer. And honestly, like, we haven't gotten any solid results out of any of those engagements. But similar to recognizing that we're not brand experts and we should hire somebody to do that for us, we are in the process of looking for the right solution for that kind of business development and client growth function within Ones and Heroes. Patrick and I are really good at what we do, and that is not the piece that there are people and organizations out there that do demand gen and lead gen, and they are really good at it. We're not that. So recognizing that, like, okay, that, like, it's okay to not be good at everything.
Mm.
Maybe you have to be mostly good at a lot of things to sort of get started, but to scale means bringing in experts.
One of the things I get a sense that that's very important to you is the culture of the company in terms of how you mentioned initially. Look, we're looking to hire the best of the best. We want really, really good talent, but also you want people who are kind of enrolled in the vision, in the mission, in what you guys stand for, the values of the company, and to take on a name like Ones and Heroes. That's with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
Shout out Uncle
Thank you.
Ben. So I really
Yes.
do
Yeah.
understand that need for finding the right players that really understand what you're doing. So what what sort of criteria do you use to kind of measure the people that you want to bring into the team?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it is vibe, so we'll
Mhm.
spend time with individuals, understanding both like personal values and desires. Human beings, we're motivated by a need to belong, and I believe a need to um, feel valued. So understanding the value that a person has to offer and how and where it fits into an organization, in my experience, has been how you build a really high performing team. Um, Sometimes I think people may not even know what they're really good at.
Mm.
And for both Patrick and me as leaders over the years, some of our most rewarding success stories have come from helping individuals discover their superpowers. Like, this is a thing that you are naturally really, really good at, and here's how it fits within a business model, so that you feel successful and the business gets what they need out of it. So when we're looking to bring on a team member, it's a sense check. Both Patrick and I are having both just the vibe questions and conversations, How do you talk about the work that you do? How do you talk about what you want to be doing? What are your priorities? Do they align with the business priorities? What are your needs? Because it's not just meeting the business needs; it's about meeting the employee or the individual's needs as well.
Mm.
And when we talk about the best of the best, like we're builders, right? We're visionaries, and we're building towards not only what the business's vision and mission is, but also our own individual career ambitions. I used to talk about employment is it's a relationship, like any relationship. And I don't assume that anybody who comes on is going to retire at Ones and Heroes. Probably, maybe, like at some point they'll go off and do other things. And that's okay. But what does the relationship offer each other for the time that we're together? Yeah.
Creating reciprocal opportunities is, I think, something that oftentimes gets overlooked. And I'll use the kind of the big corporate machine to really illustrate the point. When you go to get a job at Walmart, they don't really care who you are or what your dreams are. They may ask those questions, but the managers that are asking those questions have no training or background in it. It's just the template that they were given. Here's a list of questions to ask. And then, people just go on whether or not they liked that person or whether or not that person is at the bare minimum capable. And
Right.
that's really all it becomes. So it's really refreshing to know that there are people like you, Harmony, who are out there trying to help lead people to their passions through the work that you're doing and allowing them the space to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. I think it's the most rewarding part, really, of being a business leader. Thank you for noting that, Devin.
Yeah.
I it touches on this idea that Patrick and I have been talking about too, and really sort of a lament when I talk to some employees at giant behemoth companies who are lost in the masses of thousands and thousands of employees, and I would meet with some of these people and they would talk about how their manager doesn't know what they're doing. They aren't doing the thing that they're actually really good at doing. Maybe they're not doing the thing that they thought they were going to be hired to do. Some conversations where people have, the sort of quiet quitting where they're just sort of checking out and not really paying attention and not wholly engaged. And the loss to the organization, but also to, the employee and the human experience. What a chasm, what a giant gap that like hurts my heart a little bit for both like the success that businesses could have. Like imagine if you had an employee base firing on even just 80%
Right.
instead of maybe the 30 of engagement that they're really getting. So that was part of our, our origin conversations as well. And like, we won't tolerate 30% performance. Like it's gotta be the right fit. And if it's not like a long-term, then acknowledging that, well, look, you are perfect for this part of the project for this period of time, but let's not commit to each other beyond that because I don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste my time. And that's okay. Like it's okay to not stay in a relationship forever if it's not perfect.
Well, when it comes complete, I think that's a
Yeah.
big part of it. There's this I don't this is going to be super subtle and a little bit difficult for me to explain, so I hope you can follow this. But there's this idea that I subscribe to that if somebody is in a position where they are not fulfilling some degree of their own selfish purpose, then we are all doing each other a disservice by allowing them to stay in that role. And so there is to some degree there's a subtlety to this idea that by firing that person I am actually in service of that person because I'm
Absolutely.
freeing them up to go pursue the thing that brings them more meaning. And I hope that in my effort to explain why they're not fitting in the role they're currently in, I would be able to impart that ideology or at least that perspective into them to say, listen, right now, it's not you, it's us. We
Right.
we have recognized because we've been around long enough to see this that you aren't fulfilled in the work that you're doing
Right.
and perhaps you're just here to collect a paycheck. And I also understand how hard it is and the work that goes into going out and finding a new job and, the stress and strain that that might put on you personally, financially, emotionally, with your relationships. But if you can muscle through that thing, what you find on the other side when you do find a role that's more fulfilling to you, you're going to be grateful that we had this conversation,
Right.
right? And I know that's
Like
super subtle,
always. Yeah.
but that's a
No,
hard one.
it is really hard. But it is so true. I mean, even in my own experience in the early career days, the times that I was let go from a job, either laid off or position restructured or whatever it was, I was devastated. I mean, like, how could they not want me? And
Yeah, that's
later as I
tough.
matured, I realized, like, oh, it wasn't. They're just running a business,
Hmm.
and every time I landed in the next best thing, right? It was always the right move, even though it's hard to recognize in the moment. There was, I mean, an example of that. There was this fellow that I brought on into an executive role. I'd worked with him in a previous agency. He was also a friend, and it wasn't right. Like, even though he brought incredible talent, the business was transforming and transformed into a direction that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and wasn't what he was properly suited for. Right, it was going to be difficult for him, and we struggled along together for a while before finally I had to admit, like, I was seeing this person that I cared about professionally and personally, and they were not thriving,
Mm.
and in that perfect arrangement, we thrive in our employment, and the influences our personal lives and our whole life. And he wasn't. And I felt responsible for having brought him on into a role where he was not thriving. And when we had to have that conversation around, like, look, I don't think this is right. Like, this isn't, you're going to be better off if you leave. Um, that's hard. It is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely the right thing. And I think that's why, like, I try to have a lot of those conversations around employment as a relationship. And at some point along the way, an individual's needs might change, or the business needs might change. And that's okay. Like, if
Mm.
we can find a model where it's okay to part ways and continue to advocate for each other from a distance, or, as networks cross, that's okay. But there's something about the big machine of corporate America that has turned that relationship too often into sort of a contentious one. And when it comes time to break up, it's always an ugly breakup. Um,
Yeah, I recall very distinctly the us versus them mentality that comes from that
mm,
environment
yeah.
of when you let me go, oh, it's because there was something wrong with me. And I get that there's
Mhm.
we as humans, and this is, I think, part of the human condition, is that we derive so much of our value out of the things that we accomplish, or the work that we do, and the stuff that we spend the most of our time doing. And so, when we're in a place that we're not, all the way there in, we're not like fully enrolled or invested into it. To your point, the 80%, like, if I can
Mhm.
get somebody who is 80% invested in really kind of joining this cause or this mission and moving forward, that's a win. And
Yeah.
when you're there, it's very fulfilling work because you can focus on this and you can do things that bring you your own pleasure and
Yeah.
everybody's happy. But when you show up and you're at 30%, imagine how that reflects into all of your other day-to-day things, like the relationships that you have outside of work and, your
Mhm.
intimate relationships, your friends, your family, all of those things get kind of bogged down in the
Yep.
turmoil or chaos in your mind when you aren't doing fulfilling work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the business, I mean, the suffering from the business, the cost, the expense,
Right.
the business side too, it's massive. So yeah.
Yeah, and being a data person, I see how you would draw that correlation very quickly.
Yes, right?
Um,
Employee satisfaction and engagement. Yeah.
yeah, right. Harmony, as we kind of come to a close with our time together here, I just have to say you've been very generous with your insight and wisdom, and I'm very grateful for what you've shared so far. And um, uh, to kind of wrap things up, I wonder if we can look a little bit forward at maybe some of the big things that you're aiming at. What's on the horizon for the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So I think one of the exciting things, part of our origin story as well, the vision was to provide a technology solution for our clients that really solved for some of the key problems that we were seeing at the time. What's fascinating to me is how what that technology solution might look like has changed from when we launched Ones and Heroes 5 years ago. And so originally, where we thought it might be very marketing focused, our offering has sort of focused more on the data bit, especially as we went through the rebranding and refining that, our focus is really on data automation, data operations, and data analytics and insights. And that can be applied to marketing, but also operations, product development, employee resources, HR, finance, so across different groups within the business. And so the technology solution and what its needs and how we might build that has refined over time as well. So we are deep in development phase for that now. Patrick is, as my co-founder, he's the one that's really focused on product development, doing the coding. I told him at one point in the early days of our partnership, like, oh, I want to learn how to code too, because I don't, I dabble a little bit, but he said, no, you don't need to do that part. Lots of people know how to code. That part's taken care of.
Right.
So he's taking care of that part and building it right now in conjunction with a couple of client projects, and then excited to be rolling that out and testing it in future engagements. So that's sort of where a lot of the fire and the energy is focused currently, with the future of deploying that likely as a SaaS model and growth. Putting together our vision of current state and where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years, being very clear about what that looks like.
The clarity is so important. It's a very exciting goal that you're aiming for, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. Hopefully I'll be able to stay in touch with you long enough to see some of these plans come to fruition. This has been really cool, Harmony. I'm very, very happy that we had the chance to connect here. In closing here, I wonder if we could just leave people with a piece of advice maybe for others who are out there up to things, who are trying to build something, who are trying to follow their own passions and find meaning in the work that they're doing. If you could offer them a piece of advice, Harmony, what would that be?
So many options. I think a theme that has been resonating really strongly with me lately is don't assume you need to go it alone. I think for many years, I was sort of this fierce independent approach that I got this, I can figure it out, I can do it. And what I have found through the years of having a co-founder that balances me really well, but also reaching out and asking for help or ideas. And not that all of it is going to be exactly the piece of wisdom or insight necessary to answer the need, but the additional perspective, even if it's perspective like, oh, yep, nope, that's not right. Knowing what doesn't work is as valuable as knowing what can work. So network, reach out to the community. I'm an introvert. I tend to be super shy, and it's one of the hardest things for me to get out and do the networking bit. But I think that's part of it, being human as well, the uncertainty and we all feel that. And we all want to connect, and we all want to be recognized and seen. So I approach it from that perspective and reach out and do the networking and ask for help and float the ideas and join. There are lots of free options out there for doing networking, lunch clubs, etc., meetups. Do that.
Yeah, that's really powerful advice. Being able to get out there and meet people and find who your tribe is a very a crucial part of making progress and finding your place in the work that you're doing. So I love that. Harmony, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you on that networking note, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn, absolutely. And they can find our information on onesandheroes.com.
Perfect. We'll make sure to link to both that in the show notes for anybody that's listening and watching and wants to find it easier. And on that note, if you wanted to get in touch with me and my team for any of your marketing needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for the conversation, and I will see you in the next.